Hi, my name's Greg from TP Photography, and today I'm going to talk to you about the Sony A7 series of cameras, and I'm going to talk about the lenses that I use and the lenses that I'd recommend you to buy if you're going to choose the A7 series to shoot weddings, events, things like that. So there is a series of f4 zooms. The only one of those I have is the 7200 f4, but we're going to start with the lenses I have from the start. So I have the 28mm f2, which is this one here. It's quite a small form factor, which is quite good. I shot Nikon before and Canon, and I started off with 35mm primes, and they're very common for weddings and events, things like that. But I find that 35 can be a little bit too tight sometimes. But equally, I find that 24mm is a bit too wide. So 28mm is a great focal length. And one of the reasons I chose this was when I was first buying into the A7 series cameras, I found that there was a 35mm f2.8 and there was a 35mm 1.4 announced as well. The 35mm 1.4 is quite big. The 35mm 2.8 is very tiny, which is good, but it's a 2.8, which, depending on what your use for primes are, is either good or bad. It's a reasonably fast aperture, but it's not that fast for a prime. So I went for the 28 f2, and the main reason for that was the f2 aperture, and also you can get this adapter. So you put this adapter on here and it turns this into a 21mm f2.8. So by just carrying these two ones, I've got a 28mm and a 21mm without having to even change lenses there. So that's a great option and very flexible for my standard angle and a wider angle. So that's a great choice. If you're using two cameras, I'll often have the 28mm on one to get me the wider angles and things like that. And then often on the other camera, I'll have the 55mm. So there's the 55mm f1.8. This is an amazingly brilliant lens. It's really sharp. It just is so good for portraits, general photography. Well recommended, this one. Now, the next one I use quite a lot is this 90mm macro. So this is a 90mm f2.8. You can see it's a reasonable size, really good build quality. Now, I've often been an advocate of using macro lenses for details and for portraits. So it's a little bit longer than 85mm, but the great thing is with 85mm, you often find that you can't get close enough to get those sort of good headshots or details and things like that. So the 90mm works amazingly well in those situations where you want that little bit sort of ability to get close. So although it's a 2.8 and not sort of a faster aperture, which you often find with the 85mm, then that's not really so much of a problem because you can get closer and the bokeh's lovely and the rendering's really good. Now, the last one I use quite a lot is the 7200 f4. This, if you ever shot Canon, this looks like the standard sort of telephoto 7200, and it's really good. Now, the reason I got this was when I first started with Sony, this 90mm macro wasn't available. So if I wanted something longer than 55mm with a good aperture, then this was kind of the only choice. So I kind of bought this, and this gets used less often than the macro and the other lenses. But it's really good, high quality. If I know I need a little bit more zoom, then this is a good one to have in your bag. So again, well recommended. Now, the last one I had, I don't use it massive amounts, but it's actually pretty good in the studio, things like that. Here it's on the A7 Mark II. I've got the 2870, so it's the kit lens. Now, obviously, kit lenses have a reputation for being pretty bad, but actually this is quite good, especially if I'm using it in the studio at the sort of optimum apertures. It's a 3.5 to 5.6, so it's not stupidly fast. It's not your constant f4 or f2.8, but in all the reviews I've seen, optically it's pretty similar to the 2470 f4. So given the cost of this, it's a no-brainer compared to the 2470 f4 in my opinion. Of course, if they bring out a 2470 2.8, that might change the landscape a little bit. Personally, I think I'll stick with the primes, just because of the cost and the weight of the whole system. As soon as you put a 2.8 lens on here, it's going to be absolutely massive. So you're defeating some of the objective of using this system a little bit there. I think if you wanted a 2.8 2470, then given these cameras are so good with adapters, then I'd probably go for a Canon version, because that'd give me the autofocus, and it'd probably actually be lighter as well. So I wouldn't be giving anything up there from that point of view. Great, thanks for watching. I hope that's given you a bit of an idea of which lenses you'd buy if you're looking to move to the Sony system, or just starting out with cameras and thinking what lenses should I buy first. I think you should get the 28-70 because it's a pretty good walk around lens. It's not optically amazing, but it's pretty good. It'll do the job in a lot of situations. And then if you want to up the game in terms of optical stakes, then you've got the other lenses here I've talked about. So the 28mm is good, the 90mm is good, the 55mm is amazing, the 7200 is amazing, the 21mm adapter is pretty good. So the only lens that I might look at adding is the Batis 85mm 1.8 at some stage if it ever becomes available. But then it's so close to the 90mm that may not be much of a thing anyway. So if you want me to make another video about anything Sony related, then maybe the flash system or something like that, then leave that in the comments below. And if not, I'll see you next time, and thanks for watching.